Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're celebrating episode 40. Very grateful for our guests so far. And today we have a wonderful guest from Canada. Before I introduce my guest, I want to introduce my book, which is A Gift from Adversity. A Gift from Adversity is subtitled Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. And it's by me, Juri Love, and it's available on Amazon. After I went through these experiences growing up in Japan, I felt really compelled to write a book because I was invited as motivational speakers in different events, and then a lot of people asked me if I have a book, and I did not. So I decided to write my book, and I'm very excited to have this platform, podcast, and interview, and discuss about adversity and tools that people use to overcome, and a gift that came from adversity. Today, I want to introduce Sarah Jane Smith. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Sarah Jane.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So, can you tell our audience who you are and what you do?
My name is Sarah Jane Smith, and I live on a small island off the west coast of Canada called Salt Spring Island. And I'm an embodiment teacher and coach who helps fellow childless, not by choice women reestablish trust and connection with themselves and their bodies through embodiment practices such as yoga, meditation, journaling, as well as community.
So, what is your website or social media handle that people can learn more about your business?
Everything is under Embodied Possibility. So that's the name of my website. Also, that's where you'll find me on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, Embodied Possibility.
And how many years have you been doing that?
Well, I've been an embodiment teacher for about 12 years now, but I've been mainly focusing on working with fellow childless, not by choice women for the last 2 years.
So I don't quite understand your clientele. So are they all women, men?
They're women who wanted to have a child but couldn't.
So they are younger, older, or pretty much the spectrum?
Full spectrum. There can be very many reasons why somebody wants to have a child and isn't able to. So it spans a lot of age range.
And do you have clients from all over the world since it can be virtual?
I mainly work with people online.
So you have clients from all over. Great. Well, thank you, Sarah Jane, for being here tonight. And I want to jump into our main conversation, which is a gift from adversity. So first question that I have for you is, what was your adversity?
So my adversity was not being able to have a child and wanting one. My story involves unexplained infertility, multiple miscarriages, and chronic illness that resulted in having a hysterectomy in 2018. And that ended my ability to have a child, and then sort of determined that from then on, I would be childless, not by choice. So it was that experience that it was full of grief and lots of ups and downs, continuously trying to have a baby for so long is very wearing on you physically and also mentally and emotionally. So I'd say that was my adversity. How now do I live a life that is fulfilling and satisfying as a childless woman?
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's go back a little bit and then dissect a little bit because I think this is a topic. I know you do the business, but many people are not comfortable telling about this.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what age were you that you were trying to conceive your child?
Mm-hmm. So it was, I started at 34. So relatively late in the childbearing years, and actively trying for about 8 years.
And so, were you married or not married?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm married. So my partner and I were trying to conceive, and we did manage to get pregnant twice, but then lost the pregnancy through miscarriage.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
And I just want to share with you, I had two miscarriages as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one was DNC, but one actually almost took my life
Mm-hmm.
in the bathroom. It can be very dangerous. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say my first one, I was very depressed with the loss of the baby,
Mm-hmm.
but I was okay. But the second one, I didn't even think about the baby because I had my son and I lost like more than 50% of blood in the bathroom because the sac got stuck horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
I kept bleeding and I lost more than 50% of blood. And I went on a shock stage and I had to do 3 pints of blood transfusion. And
Wow.
my blood pressure was 60 when
Mm.
he arrived. So the second one, I really didn't have time to mourn the loss of the baby, but more of, oh my God, I was like really close to dying because the ER doctor said you're gonna die in a few hours.
Mm. Mhm.
Blood transfusion, so it was, oh,
Mm.
yeah, very
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that too. It's interesting with miscarriage is so common, and so there's this sort of idea that, oh, because it's common, it's no big deal. That it's a huge deal, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and as your story portrays, can be very dangerous as well.
very. And then to be honest with you, my first miscarriage, I was very depressed.
Mm.
But the second one, again, like I just didn't have a chance to be depressed because I was in shock stage.
Mhm.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
anyways, were you how long would you think it took you to kind of understand, dissect about the two miscarriages? Like,
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you don't ever really quote unquote get over. They're always part of your history. They're always part of your life, and it sort of makes up sort of who you are and your life experience. I wouldn't say that on a daily basis anymore. I am actively in grief over those miscarriages and my childlessness, but for a long time I was. So, in terms of getting over, I don't know. Grief comes and goes and is multi-layered, and at different stages of your life, you can still be grieving something that happened many years ago. So I feel like it's a constant practice of acceptance.
yeah, absolutely. And also, how did your husband handle these situations?
Hmm. I'm not really comfortable talking about my husband because he's not here and he's like to speak for himself.
Yes.
Um, so yeah,
I'm
thanks for
yeah,
respecting that.
no. But in a way that I think sometimes, it's very hard for men too. And then I think, a lot of times, sometimes, like, maybe women don't get support during these difficult times. And
Absolutely. You're completely right. And it is very different for the person going through it and then the person supporting the person going through it, in terms of in this case, miscarriage, for sure. And you're right. Lots of people don't get the support that they need from their partner or from friends and family. And as well, I think also because there's this idea that because it's common, you just, oh, well, just try again, just next time, it'll happen. So I think it's a taboo subject as well. So people are uncomfortable talking about it. And it gets kind of swept under the rug where it needs to be, women going through this need to be supported, and it needs to be a conversation that's more out there in the world because it is so common.
yes, I think what people don't understand about miscarriage, and then the loss of child, um, that is growing inside of you, and then suddenly they die. And then again, the first one I felt like when my doctor like contacted me, I remember like the heartbeat was low, and they said I might miscarry, but then I did not want to believe.
Mm.
Then the next ultrasound, they didn't say anything to me.
Mhm.
And I came home. They wanted to make sure I get home, and they said, "Are you home?" I said, "Yes." "Are you not driving?" And yes. So
Mm.
the sun showed your baby's heart stopped. And I remember like calling my neighbor, and then she kindly came from upstairs, and then she gave me this warmest hug.
Mm.
Yeah, it was very unforgettable phone call.
Mm. Mhm. Oh, interesting that they wanted you to be home first. That's a very empathetic approach, so you get to be in a place that is safe for you and hope, maybe with people who care for you, as opposed to being told something like that in a doctor's office by somebody you've never really met before.
Yeah, and then I didn't know why they were not telling me anything about
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
and I didn't wanna jinx anything.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was hard. So, in your case, did doctor tell you right away?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, they came in and the heartbeat, looking for it, and then they left the room, and then they were out of the room for a really long time before saying anything. So we were just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting, and then came back and they said, unfortunately, we can't find a heartbeat, and you know, sorry. And then
Oh,
that's
so
it. So
they
no resources were offered in terms of um, grief counseling or speaking with anybody who had any expertise or who could offer help in any way. It was just, this is what happened. Sorry. Bye.
So my case was when the heartbeat was low, they already kind of predicted that baby's gonna die, so they
Mm.
recommended me to take a pill to miscarry. So
Oh, wow.
I said, "No, there is a heartbeat. It might pick up. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna take this pill. No way."
Mm-hmm.
And then I switched the OBGYN doctor.
Mm.
They said, "Yeah, no, they didn't recommend the pill." So I think OBGYN doctor, I shopped around, and then, like, I think a lot of women don't understand that if you are not comfortable with your doctor, you have a right to change.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think Second one, I remember that they did not have the DNC schedule. No, they are booked. So I started to bleed on Thursday, and then they said, we don't have anything to next Wednesday. And I almost died on Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah, I just had a really bad cramp, and I
Mhm.
couldn't get up, and I started to have this massive blood coming out.
Mm.
Yeah, and I lost the baby in the bathroom. And it was just really hard.
Mm. Mhm.
I lost consciousness too.
Wow.
So I don't remember. I think I just fell in the bath. So what I'm saying is, you're so right. People, first of all, don't talk about it. But then when I spoke out, like say on Facebook, there are so many people message me that happened to me, that happened to me, private message me, and that happened. I'm like, really?
Mhm. Mhm.
So they share their own experience. So I'm grateful that you came to my podcast and talked about this. Now I have a question for you. So in Japan,
Mm.
our culture is very different than American culture. Women are it's changing, but especially say starting from my grandma's generation or older, my mom, my generation as well, we were taught to devote for men and devote our life to men or
Mhm.
future husband. My aunt was not allowed to go to high school, but instead she was forced to go to kimono school, like learning how to make kimono and cooking to be a best wife.
Mhm.
And I don't know about Canada, but then that would actually lead to you being a single, and that means you are worthless, and you don't have a child. That means you
Mhm.
don't have a worth as a woman,
Mhm.
and that is a big pressure for a lot of women in Japan. And I remember my piano teacher even was worried that she can't find husband before 25.
Mm.
And I'm like, I don't want to be the leftover Christmas cake. That's what she was saying. I think
Mm.
definitely changing, but it's almost like your dream. The reason that you were born is to marry somebody and then have children. I don't know if you have those kind of pressure growing up in Canada.
Yeah, I would say it was, there's threads that are very similar, maybe not overtly, the messaging isn't there, but it's definitely tied, having children is tied to worth for sure. And there's this sort of idea that, yeah, if you don't, if you're not able to have a child for whatever reason, then you're worth less somehow. You're sort of in that category that didn't quite match up, didn't quite meet the standards. Um, People have never said that to me, so that's why I'm saying it's not overt, but it's a sort of in the cultural understanding that that's what you do, as a woman. You have children, and I know lots of women choose not to have children, and there's a big movement of people who are child free, so consciously choosing not to have children. And then there's women who want to have children and can't. And I definitely felt for quite a while that I was lacking, like something was wrong with me. My body didn't work properly, it didn't do what it was supposed to do, and that somehow it was my fault that I couldn't have a baby. But I know that that's not true. But it's sort of those cultural ideas are ingrained in you, even if you don't necessarily, I mean, I don't believe that women who don't have children are worth less. I don't believe that at all if you were to ask me that. But when I was struggling with accepting being childless, that was definitely something that I had to confront.
So was there a moment that people, maybe a friend or family or somebody said something to you, or not really?
That made me think that I was. Can you explain your question a bit more?
So in Japan, like for instance, in-laws
Mm.
pressure you to have children right after
Mm.
marriage.
Yeah, no, nobody was pressuring me. I didn't get any of that kind of pressure from family or in-laws or anybody. Everybody has in my family has been extremely understanding.
Yes, I think that is a difference between Canada and Japan or some of the countries. Some of the women that I met from Africa or maybe Middle Eastern countries, India, a lot of countries, women suffer with this issue because the in-laws pressure
Mhm.
friends, companies. And
Mhm.
yeah, I remember like working in Tokyo and the people gossiping about this single woman who are older and childless. Like they're gossiping about them, and I remember that. And then that's like mentality that I grew up with. And one of the reasons why I left Japan was that pressure
Mm.
as a woman that you're supposed to do this and that, serve men and then have kids, you know.
Mhm.
And I think America, I would say less. Depends on family, but I think it's
I would agree with you. I think it is less, but it also depends on your religion, different religions and different cultures. So even if it can be, in America, people can be different from different cultures and different religions. I think there's different pressures based on that.
yes. So this was about how many years ago?
Well, I had a hysterectomy in 2018, so 4 years ago. So that sort of ended the trying to conceive journey. And I'm actually really glad that there was that sort of line in the sand that sort of like that it's not possible anymore, because it really gave me the opportunity to take a step forwards, to sort of like, okay, what's next, without a lot of what if we kept trying, and what if we did this, and what if we did that. I think that because I was in that place for so many years, like continually hoping, and then every month when I would get my period, sort of like feeling really disappointed and upset, and sort of like this endless cycle of like hope and despair, where after having the hysterectomy, it was sort of really clear cut that like, okay, no, like it's never going to happen. And so now what?
I see. So Sarah Jane, I really appreciate this conversation because I've had about 39 guests. You're my 40th guest, and then everybody talked about different adversities, both genders. And then, for instance, my first guest, Piedra, survived through two active gun shooting situations, and she talked about that. And then each of my guests, completely different trauma, adversity. And your case is the first that I interviewed. Um, one of my guests actually had 5 miscarriages.
Oh wow.
Yes, and she is still trying. And then she told me that, well, the immune system, etc. But her tools to overcome it was very interesting. So let's actually move our conversation to the tools that you use to overcome this. Um, my favorite part of this podcast that I didn't realize, all I wanted was for people to feel not alone by sharing our adversities. But when I added about the tools, because I didn't want this podcast to be just venting platform, but something that people can take away from us. And each one of my guests had completely different tools that they use to overcome. And sometimes when people have never been through these adversities, they just say, okay, just go see a therapist and you'll be fine. It's not like that at all. So we try different modalities, and I've tried so many different modalities.
Mm,
Some didn't work. Some people recommended I tried, and some didn't work.
sure.
So, what do you recommend in your situation that if people are going through this loss or childless situation, what are the best tools that you use to overcome this?
So for me, I'm a longtime yoga teacher and movement teacher. So connecting with myself and with my body through yoga, and a particular type of yoga known as trauma-informed yoga. So not you wouldn't take this kind of class like at your local yoga studio or community center. They're not really offered. It's sort of specialized, and there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of choice. So I might, when I'm leading a class, I might say something like, raise your arm up to a level that works with your shoulder, as opposed to like lift your right arm up. So somebody might move their arm here, somebody else might here, somebody else might move here. And so the idea behind that is that you really have to tune in to what you want and what you need in that moment. And throughout my infertility journey, I felt like I didn't have a lot of choice. These things were happening to me. The miscarriages happened to me. I didn't choose them. The chronic illness happened to me. I had no choice about that. I didn't have a choice about the hysterectomy. So therefore, I didn't have any choice about whether I was able to have a child or not.
I
And
see.
that constant level of like taking away choice has a ripple effect out into my whole life, where I lost trust and I lost connection with myself. And so this form of movement practice, where it's all about choice, helped me build back up the idea that I do have choice in my life. I do have agency. There's things that I can enact in my life, and that I can trust myself to make these decisions. I can trust myself to make the choice. So that has been huge. And it's not something you just do once, like you can maybe get the concept once, but it's something that you have to do over and over and over and over. So really incorporating that style of practice into my own practice, not, I teach lots of classes to general populations, at that sort of like regular yoga studio classes. But in my own practice and in my work with other women who are childless, not by choice, I teach that trauma-informed style. So I would say that as number one. Number two is my tool is self-compassion. So you can only truly accept a situation that you're in if you have compassion for yourself. And so self-compassion is about meeting all the different parts of you, like all the parts that have those feelings that we don't really like to own up to, like anger, jealousy, grief, regret. So letting those parts of yourself and letting those feelings come up and be with them. So it's almost like you're different parts of yourself and you're meeting yourself. So when I feel sadness and grief, I try and meet myself in that place with kindness, as opposed to this idea that we're sort of covering up grief and sadness with gratitude or hope or something like that, where we're meeting it. So it's with the idea of getting to a place of acceptance. And then my third tool, it's not really a tool, but it's something that has been instrumental in my healing journey, is connecting with other women who have had similar yet unique journeys that have also led them to be childless, not by choice.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the tools, and then what's the word you said about the yoga? Trauma yoga? What's the name?
Trauma informed.
Yoga.
Yeah,
Trauma.
trauma informed yoga.
I have never heard of it. My mother in Japan has a studio, yoga studio. It's
Oh
called
yeah, wow.
Happy Yoga.
Mm.
When she came to America, my friend, well, actually, my American friend who went to Japan introduced her some yoga poses,
Mm-hmm.
like Kyoto when we traveled together, and she got hooked. And then she started a yoga studio, but I don't think she knows about this.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma-informed yoga.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, so when you Google trauma-informed yoga in your local area, do you think people would find it easy?
In my local area, yes, probably something would come up for sure. Yeah.
Listeners, like our listeners, like whoever is listening to this.
I mean, it's not something that is widely taught. You know, it's very specialized. So they often teach it in service settings. So they often teach it in sort of like addiction centers or to people who are incarcerated or community services, places like that. You know, it's not, as I said, it's not a style that you would necessarily find at your local yoga studio, but there might be different people all over teaching this style. There is an organization called Yoga Outreach, and they're in Vancouver, British Columbia, and they're the sort of main trainer for this style of yoga in Canada. So their website would be a great place to look for resources in Canada and where people are teaching this style of yoga.
And how did you find out about this trauma-informed yoga?
You know, I don't know how I first heard about it, but the yoga community, you know, there's a lot of people who do yoga and a lot of yoga teachers, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a smallish community, you know. So as a teacher, you hear about different offerings, different styles, different modalities like that. So I think I heard about it through the yoga community, and it really resonated with me.
So are you a certified teacher for trauma-informed yoga?
Yeah.
So you have to, even if you become a yoga teacher, you have to be licensed for another set of training.
Yeah, you would already have your basic 200 or 300 hour training, and then this would be an additional certification that you do on top of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that you said that you didn't have choice. Then when you have the trauma-informed yoga, that you give your clients choices while doing yoga. That's really interesting. I feel the same way for my trauma that I did not have a choice. As a child sex abuse survivor, I had no choice of this abusive environment. So I got out of it when I was 13. Um, and ever since, like I suffer with PTSD, panic attack, some, sex addiction, or different things that I didn't even know that was the problem. Then what you said kind of made me think that what if I had the choice, and then what if I am trained to know that I do have the choice, and it's a completely different neural path that you are healing yourself, and then that leads to maybe self-compassion. Is that combination of trauma-informed yoga and then self-compassion work well together?
Absolutely. You have to practice that style of yoga. You have to start from kindness and curiosity. To be able to even tap into, like, well, what do I want? What does it mean when someone gives me the choice, raise your arm to a height that works for your body? Like, what does that even mean? Like, how are you making that decision? You know, so you might make the decision of like, you're going to lift it as high as you possibly can because you've always been taught to like go do your very best, you know, and like strive and reach. But what if today it just means this, you know, not very high? And that feels good today because I don't have a lot of energy, or I just want to try something different. So to even be able to make the decision about what you're going to do moment to moment with your body, it has to come from a place of self-compassion.
And then how did you learn about self-compassion after you went through this adversity?
I I don't know where I first heard about the concept, but it's a very common part of mindfulness. And there's two sort of main teachers of self-compassion that are current now in the US. One of them is Kristen Neff, and the other one is Chris Germer, and they are lead researchers in this field of self-compassion. So I've been through some training with their center around self-compassion practice, but they have great books and great resources on the websites.
Do you remember the website?
The Center for Mindful Self-Compassion.
Center for
Mindful Self-Compassion.
Wow, never heard of it. So my PCP told me, is that selfcompassion.org or .com?
I don't know, actually.
No, I'm just gonna put it on the comment. Center for Mindful Self-Compassion. Perfect. Now, yeah, there's a website called selfcompassion.org.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of tools. And I think self-sabotage is what we are very good at. But we're not good at self-compassion.
Absolutely.
I don't know why. I don't know why we still like what you're saying earlier about what's wrong with me. You know, like nothing is wrong. Like you are not here complete, but we just sabotage ourselves.
It's true.
So after you learn the self-compassion and then did these courses, did you feel any shift?
Yeah, so it wasn't just sort of like, oh, I did this training and then now, boom, I feel differently. Integrating grief takes practice, you know, takes sort of like constant awareness. And I did these trainings and explored these teachings because I'm a teacher. And so it was sort of like to do these things, then to teach them to others. And I already had these skills, and I found that they were just really exactly what I needed to help integrate the grief that comes with childlessness. So it's almost like it's not like I didn't stumble upon it, but it just sort of was like serendipitous that I found that these things worked for my own healing as well as they did. And it takes constant practice and awareness. And when I say constant, I don't mean that I'm, you know, doing yoga like 2 hours a day, or, you know, doing self-compassion practice for long stretches. But it's something that's woven into my life. You know, you can sit and do self-compassion meditation, you know, be quiet and still, but you can also do it as you go about your daily life, right? Just coming from that point of view that you're going to make decisions, make choices, and approach situations with self-compassion.
It really reminds me of one of my guests in the past, that we actually did some exercise together after the podcast with my friend to write letter to your inner child. So we did that. And it's almost, self-compassion in a way that we did not learn growing up. We're beating ourselves up. But then now we're grown, so we are having a compassion towards your younger self.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we all did that together. My brother,
Mm.
my son as well. My son is 11, but he did that.
Mm.
Like what you said, is self-compassion begins with not self-sabotaging yourself. And not,
Even recognizing the difference.
yes,
Yeah,
it's hard. It's
it
very,
is.
very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then unless you are constantly seeking the modality and then the help, people go down a spiral, self-sabotaging and self-harming,
Mm-hmm.
addiction, all the things that comes with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Sarah Jane, the third one that you said, it was interesting that once you connected with this woman, what did you learn the most?
I think I sort of the gift has been being forced to work on self-acceptance. To integrate this grief and integrate this experience, I have to accept myself. So I'd say that the opportunity to really do a deep dive into self-acceptance has been the greatest gift that has come from this experience and continues to be. Because as the grief, and particularly around childlessness, but all grief, it doesn't just go away. You don't just sort of like get over it and move on and it's not a thing anymore. It's always present. So it's sort of an ongoing practice.
Thank you so much for saying that. So a little bit different than self-compassion, but self-acceptance.
Yeah, the opportunity to really work on accepting myself, because to be able to be okay and move forwards and take those next steps, that's integral, to accept where I am at now and to accept that I wanted to have a child or children and it will never happen. So now what? I could stay in that place of deep grief and anger, and that's a choice, but that's not a choice that I wanted to make. I didn't want to stay there. And so to be able to move forward, acceptance was the key and still is the key. And so I see that as the gift. So not only accepting myself in the situation of childlessness, but the whole of myself, in all areas of my life. And it is an ongoing practice. I'm not saying that it's complete, but just the real opportunity to do a deep dive into that, I think, has been the gift.
And then would you say another gift is maybe connecting with other women and maybe sharing their testimonials?
Absolutely. Yeah. Being able to connect in such a deep and vulnerable way, because these topics and this grief runs deep. And so being so honored to be trusted by others, and to have them share with me, has really been a gift as well.
I am sure that they feel the same way about you and your teaching and your practice.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm very sorry that you went through that. And then I feel the pain. And I went through so many different traumas, but I just really want to let you know, let our audience know, and then past guests know that again, talking about this, talking about mental health, difficult talks, normalizing this conversation, you never know how many people, even one person that you can touch or make them feel that they are not absolutely alone. They're not alone at all.
Absolutely.
So, being said that, would you share your last message to especially women who are going through the very issue?
Yeah, and I think it is just that, having the bravery to reach out and to make connections with others. Facebook is a really great place for making those kind of connections. There's so many private groups where you don't necessarily have to interact if you don't want to, but just reading the stories and the support that others are offering can give you that feeling that it's not just you, that all the things that you're feeling aren't just in your head, and that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're feeling all of those things, that many of us have also felt that, and it's normal, it's part of the journey. And yeah, reaching out, I'd say, is a big one.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Before you leave, I wanted to share that again, one of my guests who came and they had 5 miscarriages in a row. She said she found this place called Rage Room where you pay and you break things, smash things, and then break electronics and stuff. So I was jealous. So I Googled and I found similar business 30 minutes away from where I live.
Oh, wow.
I did an appointment right away and I went with my son and we just like got 2 milk plates full of glasses and bins, and then we were given some weapons to break them, and it was crazy experience. And we bought TV, $35, and we got these ledge hammers and then like crazy tools like metal bat, like just broke things.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah, but the mother who started it in local one is called Just Smash It. She said her daughter had so much anger issue that therapist couldn't really solve, and she heard about the room in New Jersey, but it's too far, so she started her own business thing.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so you never know what kind of tools that you use works, and I never knew about trauma informed yoga until today. So I will have to tell my mother
Please do.
about it. Well, thank you so much again, Sarah Jane, for being so kind and so compassionate to yourself and to other women. And I am very, very grateful that you started this teaching for other women to be able to connect and share this hardship. And again, as a single mom, I felt so worthless for a long time, but my PCP told me about selfcompassion.org, and he said, "You're not in Japan, you're in America. It's okay to be single." That's what my and it really helped me because as a woman, that's one of the purpose to be with partner or have child. But we are much more than that. We have so much potential. And I'm a journalist, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a musician, and I have all this accomplishment that I finally start to feel okay to be single, find my acceptance.
Yeah. And broadening the scope, you just listed a whole bunch of identities, as you said, journalist, filmmaker, musician, giving equal weight to those other identities and those other things that you're clearly accomplished at is another form of practicing self-compassion, not diminishing your accomplishments and the things that you are, and letting them be overshadowed by the things that you think you're not.
You're 100% right. And I really appreciate that compassion from you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah Jane, again for sharing the time with me and then coming to my episode 40 of A Gift from Adversity.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to our audience for listening to A Gift from Adversity. And my name is Juri La. I'm your host. And we will see you next time.